You will own nothing and you will like it. That is the anti-ownership proclamation made by the 1% of the world who own 99% of it and are still angry the rest of us still have that 1% to hang on to. The people who want you shackled to ever-increasing subscriptions, like having a credit card for staying alive that you will never pay off, always increasing, and at the end you will have nothing to pass on, so your progeny has even less. The wealthiest people in the world know that ownership allows you to both avoid repaying them for something you already bought, and know that you can use that ownership to earn and resell. But we are not here to talk about the planned obsolescence of global society, just how our beloved games industry and the corporate elites who control it are mimicking this one-sided disparity that only serves to widen the gap and make us all poorer. This is not something that can be fought by being docile. Just like the decade of activist ruination, we will forever be under assault from malicious forces in entertainment. Forces who view you as a mark to be preached to about social justice or a wallet to squeeze. You should own the games you buy at ever-increasing prices, as well as the microtransactions you pay ever more atrocious fees to obtain. Aside from the likes of Ubisoft, you would think that nobody would take issue with this, or at least would realize this is such a popular opinion, it would be wild to go against it. Enter Pirate Software, who in full irony is perhaps the most anti-software piracy influencer on the webs. He does not like the idea of people owning what they pay for. I know. Boo! Hiss. That's a slight mischaracterization of his arguments, but hey, I think he'd approve. After all, mischaracterization is kinda his thing. There is sentiment that he killed the movement now. Normally, I would not look at one guy and say he is responsible for the success or failure of an initiative that is this wide. But in this case, maybe I could be convinced otherwise. But perhaps not in the direction he wanted. Before we get to that though, why is this even important? Does it really matter that we have game preservation? Well, we have already seen the loss of physical everywhere else. Movies, shows, music, they all now lack a physical form. Do you buy DVDs or just go to Netflix? How do you feel about needing a dozen streamers to get everything you want to watch? And how does it feel when nobody seems to have that obscure or ancient movie, so you have no way to watch it at all? A CD? A record? Okay, boomer. Whatever you say, boomer. Do you drive a horse-drawn chariot to your job as a chimney sweep? We can assume games will be lost to us, because almost everything else has gone all digital, and thus largely become something you do not own. They can be taken away or altered at someone else's whim, and the loss of physical games or ownership is not just a symptom of neglect. In some cases, it absolutely is, of course, especially for early eras, where preservation was at best an afterthought, and a lack of foresight saw 87% of early games being no longer commercially available, and thus risk being lost forever without dedicated efforts. But there is something far more malicious about this as well, something that comes alongside subscriptions, microtransactions, planned obsolescence, as well as the financial benefit of some form of a re-release. Here's the thing, not owning games is like an infinite money glitch for corporations. Hence why Ubisoft pulled The Crew to give you The Crew 2, crewing over gamers in the process. The biggest example of this is of course the sports game genre, though the likes of Call of Duty is another solid example. Every year FIFA comes out with new game, same with the other sports titles, and they can get people who have spent in some case tens of thousands of dollars to re-spend that every single year. It is their best case scenario. But it's not something many other games can replicate on an annual basis. Sure, you can bring out Genshin Impact, then Star Rail, then ZZZ, but they are fundamentally different games. You can make a RuneScape too, but what if most people stick with old school? When it comes to games with the most successful microtransaction strategies, they are live service games with very long lives, which try to get you hooked on spending by giving you more, better, prettier characters, gear, and cosmetics. League of Legends is over a decade old. Black Desert is getting up there in years. Players will stick with these games for a very long time. And even if a sequel is made, Players may still stick with the old game, both because they prefer how it plays, such as old school RuneScape, or they have so much stuff they have earned or own or bought in that old game that will just not carry over. So here's the problem. To keep earning money, these games need a few things. 1, a consistent player base that remains playing that game for years. That's a big challenge when most live service games can't last a month now. It requires constant updates. It requires more and more new stuff to come out. It requires development. It requires money and investment from the company. 2, a player base that wants to keep buying microtransactions. There are some games that can manage to coax people to buy power and in-game currency, or, as they're often called, pay to win. The likes of Black Desert Online, World of Warcraft, and many gacha games can pull this off. However, it is otherwise very unpopular, at least in the West. If you can get people hooked on buying power, all you need to do is keep making stronger characters, better gear, and you will make more money. But again, it is not something that can be sold to everyone. So 3, and likely the most easy, keep making sexy or cool outfits and cosmetics. This is something the industry used to recognize across the world. However, since Overwatch 1, the West started to not embrace this. So basically, outside of sports-related games and shooters, the West has desperately wanted to get both into live service, but has also been allergic to doing anything that would make a live service game make money, with a few exceptions, of course. As mentioned, Western live service games pretty much have to avoid selling power because most gamers still hate this, especially for multiplayer competitive games. Western games also refuse to make cosmetics for feminine, sexy characters, and lately, they even want to avoid making masculine, cool, badass skins for games. Basically, they are handicapped by the players not wanting to accept one of the key moneymakers in these live service games, while on the other hand, they're being handicapped by the developers refusing to go after the cosmetic approach, which gamers would actually spend money on, even in the West. Enter Ubisoft gamers need to get used to not owning their games. What if, instead of trying to make long-lasting games, instead of trying to make games that are appealing to players, instead of giving gamers what they want, things that both require talent, something these AAA studios seem to lack, and a desire to do things customers want, something AAA developers refuse to do. Instead, we release frequent games, milk the players, and then snatch that game away with an annual replacement. The Crew 2 was them testing the waters, and this is something Ubisoft loves to do. If you were duped into thinking Crew 2 is just not that consumer unfriendly, it was only a sign of what's to come. It was the baby steps, as they have with multiple levels of digital deluxe, rampant microtransactions, NFT games, getting away with inappropriate behavior. They push the envelope. When it comes to horrible business practice, Ubisoft is the industry key innovator, something they do not get enough credit for. As so many times, Ubisoft is called a stale, repetitive, uncreative studio. It just isn't fair. They have revolutionized screwing over gamers and ruining the games industry like nobody else. And it is just unfair. Their efforts in scummy behavior get overshadowed so often. And once they can get away with a little, they will push for more. And that is what Ubisoft plans to do with the Crew 2. They will start to hit other games the same way. You will lose access to more and more and more of your games, whether to make way for sequels or to make way for remakes and remasters. More and more of your games will rely on always online, server access, and then they will try to gaslight you into believing they are doing you a favor when they permit you to buy their overpriced copy-paste sequel. Consider that you can never play Warcraft 3 as it was ever again, as Warcraft 3 Refunded came out and damaged most of the multiplayer functionality of the original game. That is the future they envision for gaming. And here is the reality and how this all connects to the likes of stop killing games. The games industry wants more money from you. The industry wants $80 games. They want no more physical games. They want digital only. They want you to own nothing. They want NFT games that let them resell microtransactions. They want everything to be AI and to not ever have to disclose they are using that AI. They want to go to small artists and steal their work and put it in their games. We saw Marathon stealing art. We have numerous examples of AI being used even in massive games like Call of Duty. Ubisoft released an NFT game very recently. We are getting collector editions without the physical game included. And because we bought Mario Kart for $80, we are going to buy GTA for $100 and Elder Scrolls for $120. Gamers, we denied NFT games. We did not buy them, and because of that, after half a decade, aside from Ubisoft, almost nobody wants to touch these games. We have purchase power to deny evil behavior from the industry. Gamers, we denied DEI games. We did not buy Concord, Avowed, Veilguard, Saints Row, Kill the Justice League, Avengers, and Forspoken. And now, fewer and fewer studios are trying to hang on to political preaching, while more are releasing games that put gameplay far, far, far above ideology. We can win at these things. That said, some fights are hard to win because the game is rigged against us. We deserve transparency so we can make good purchasing decisions. We deserve ownership. We deserve preservation. Without some rules, there is nothing stopping games from dying. And this is from either a game being abandoned, the likes of live service games that die in a year and get shut down, your Babylon's Fall, your Concord. This also includes games that are no longer available, older games that are maybe lost forever to us, or older games that are being intentionally shuttered. Enter the likes of Nintendo, going after any attempts of emulation and making it hard to keep games they aren't even making money off of from vanishing off the face of the planet. But can the government fix this? You're right to be skeptical. Those old fossils will ruin everything. And you are probably right, the government has been a blight on entertainment, secretly spending your money to negatively impact beloved games, movies, and shows for years. In a way, they are just as responsible for the cultural colonization and vandalism of gaming as anyone else. However, a situation where your purchases can be ripped from you at a whim is untenable. This is enough of a no-brainer. It should be easy to make laws to protect your purchases at a governmental level. Because, again, who is even against the concept that you own what you buy? Aside from corporations, that is. This is one of those "this is popular with everyone" things that voters who pay attention will all be in favor of. So the question is, what is more important to the government, the people they serve, or the quiet money the corporations stuff their pockets with? Guess we will find out soon, hopefully. And hopefully is the term, because in perfect irony, pirate software has caused the ultimate Streisand effect. This entire thing may have been completely forgotten if he hadn't put it on blast, and in turn, provoked the reaction content from basically every other major influencer in the gaming sphere when they came after him. So, this is why I'm not spending very much time talking about him specifically. Because, and this may be an unpopular opinion at the time, it is a good thing that people can talk about this. Even if they're given the most insane takes possible, even someone you disagree 100% with. The point of the initiative is, after all, to spark conversation, and that is what it has done. In trying to kill this, he triggered the ultimate Streisand effect. This is now the top gaming Discord's topic. So agree or disagree, the input he gave is perhaps the biggest boon in getting to those 1 million signatures they need for this. And if you support it, you should go sign, although it seems to be an EU-only thing. Also, while we're at this, consider this. Chances are you have heard others talk about this. Major gaming influencers giving their takes. What have been the most convincing arguments among them? Were they the ones of threats, anger, spiteful name-calling, demands to silent voices, attacks on character, or job interference? It is likely not the case. Instead, the measured, logical counters of any criticism of the Stop Killing Games movement, they're the most impactful. The meticulous and rational takedown, a cool-headed, methodical discussion that lasts. It makes you consider things. And this is something that has taken down most of the enemies of gaming and the gaming audience over the years. In-depth, Persistent investigation will defeat the emotional, extreme tactic of the malevolent forces that harm gaming. You know who they are, the people who see any critique of a game and call the audience bigots, toxic masculinity, gooners, incels. You have heard the names they use, attacks on character without a hint of logic, purely meant to label any argument, or the people making the argument, as something unsavory, and thus not worth even considering. This method of labeling gamers in derogatory ways became the only way journalists could communicate, because they know nothing of games, they hate gamers, and they have zero insight. So instead, just insult and attack. And that is behind much of the basis, behind the flippant, harsh manner of which Pirate attacked the SKG movement to begin with. Instead of hitting the target with calculated arguments, he's shadowboxing. Shadowboxing because some of the things he's saying, they do make sense against the argument, but that's the entire trick. The problem is, he's fighting an enemy he made up. He is fighting against problems with the initiative that are not even part of the initiative. This is a very, very common debate tactic in political influence spaces. Whenever they feel like they do not have a solid answer to your question or your statement, a good counter, or to the main goals of something like stop killing games, instead of trying to argue against an argument that might make them look bad or wrong or even somewhat even in the pro and cons category, make up an argument that is somewhat in the same ballpark. Mislead your viewers into believing that is what your opponent is saying, and then destroy that argument that you made up solely for you to destroy. Or, alternatively, call the opponent some manner of names and attack their intelligence or morality, and then dismiss them due to it. It is a very effective strategy, but it is one that can be defeated with cool heads and logic. So does this matter? Is games preservation important? History, art, culture should be preserved at best as possible. It provides a window into the past. It tells a story of the creators and the audiences of the time alike. Failure or success, it all tells you something about games. This is at the heart of this, the desecration and deletion of history. We have seen so many classic books being rewritten to cater to ultra-sensitive, statues torn down, works of art destroyed abroad and at home, histories and cultures rewritten for political reasons. We now have countries like Egypt suing Netflix over an attempt to rewrite and defile history. We have seen over and over so many game remakes censor and defile the original works, especially the original scripts. You've seen games that were made with serious, era-accurate dialogue, meant to immerse you in a fictional world which decades ago did just that. Today though, you will have modern speech forced into localization and rewritten scripts that have terms and ideas that are unique to the last 2 years. You have modern audience nonsense forced into games which should be providing a medieval or futuristic aesthetic, and it is instead broken up by some meme that has already become dated in the period between the game development and it hitting the shelves. Instead of accurate translations meant to respect foreign cultures, we have modern localizations which effectively strip any cultural value from artwork and colonizes it towards extreme Westernism, to concepts that are only relevant to the people living in a handful of elitist, wealthy US cities. So, do you believe in games preservation? Do you believe you own what you purchase? The fruits of your labor, the sweat on your brow? Do you want to know that a song from 50 years ago will not have its lyrics replaced to be more modern appropriate? Should books be kept as the author wrote them, or scrubbed of anything that might offend or challenge the readers? Should games be kept as they were created, available as a snapshot into the era that produced it? Like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts below. Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. And that process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except the endless present in which the party is always right. Consider this, there is a content creator called the Angry Nintendo Nerd. The games he covers are some of the worst games of the 80s and 90s, the sorts of games that in a modern era may have been shut down in a few weeks and scrubbed from memory, made inaccessible for play. Some of these games are absolutely horrendous, worse even than the likes of Concord, The Crew, Babylon's Fall. It sounds hard to believe, but it is true. Yet, you can learn from them. He tells stories of the problems behind these games being made, the creative decisions that worsen the games, watching him cover the likes of Silver Surfer, and its near-invisible projectiles that blend with the background. The massive player hitbox compared to a screen where every inch of it means death. The slow, tortuous movement of Jekyll and Hyde, the miserable, non-intuitive map design of the Goonies 2. Seeing the worst of gaming makes you appreciate how the great games made it work. Players in the future will not understand that Marvel Rivals and Concord came out mere months apart, and how much Rivals did right compared to how much Concord did wrong. We can already look at Marathon and Fair Games and see the industry does not even want to learn when the mistakes are still fresh. But if Concord were still available 10 years from now, when some journalist tells you it was truly an amazing game that the gamers killed for no reason, you would be able to see for yourself that no, it was always a steaming pile of donkey diarrhea. But even trash tells a story, so here is hoping corporations cannot keep getting away with this. And if that gets you heated, I apologize for absolutely nothing.